Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Miss Lenore. Thanks a lot for spending your morning to join our program and share your amazing journey, amazing stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Wow, you haven't even heard what I'm going to say. Maybe no thanks are necessary. We'll see.
You haven't been to my country, so please accept this a invitation. If you and your family decide to travel here, like your son did, right? Your friend did.
Yeah,
If you decide to travel here,
yeah.
now you have a new friend, a new family, and we would love to have some tea with you, some coffee with you, some food with you, or traveling with you around the city to show you our people, our culture here. Okay.
I'm dialing the travel agent on the other screen. How do I get to Vietnam? Cheap tickets to Vietnam. That sounds great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for a little taste of our culture, Miss Lenore, it's very honored if we can have you to share a little bit about who you are and the work you do. Would you please do that?
I could. It's always a little embarrassing. So I'm Lenore, and for most of my career, I was a newspaper reporter and columnist. Are newspapers dying over there like they are here? They're just doing so horribly here, are they?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Here they're just, there's a couple that are still, going strong. And the paper I used to work for doesn't even have a newsroom anymore. Anyways, I was a newspaper reporter in the golden days of newspapers. And years ago, in 2009, I wrote a column about why I let my 9-year-old ride the subway alone here in New York City, where we live. And unlike all my other columns before or since, that one went completely viral. And I ended up on every talk show in America and then Australia and England and all the English speaking countries, having to defend myself because there was this perception that any mom who would let her son do something on his own without her there, without her stalking him or tracking him, and I didn't give him a phone, so without a phone, really didn't care if he lived or died, which is a weird idea. Why would I write a column if I didn't care if my son lived or died? Um, but it really touched a nerve here. And one of the reasons is that anybody my age, I'm over 60, remembers a childhood when we all, walked to school, played outside, stayed out till the streetlights came on, until it was dinner time. Summers were just free form. And that has so completely disappeared in this country that we just did a study that found that the majority of kids age 8 to 12 in the United States have rarely or never walked around their own neighborhood without an adult. The majority said that they've never been in a public place, which is like a store or the street or a park, without an adult. And many of them, I think it was the majority, but just a little over 50%, had never been to another aisle at the grocery store without an adult at the supermarket. And so that's such a radical change in what we think kids are capable of and in how we regard our communities, our neighbors, that the article touched a nerve. But I've been talking about it ever since, and it sort of doesn't get old because it's a really strange cultural moment we're in, at least here in the United States, where we're treating kids very preciously. We buy them a lot of things, we take them a lot of places, and yet we deny them the I'd say the best part of childhood, which is the freedom to run around, have fun, climb trees, make friends, and start to become part of the community. We don't let them do that unless they are completely supervised and often tracked. So that's me. And I don't really write for newspapers anymore because, as I've said, in my country, they're like, that's sort of a non-starter at this point.
So the article was in 2009. What
It's
year was it?
2008 or 2009 or 2010, right around then. I mean, I should know. I think let's say it was 2009.
Okay, alrighty. I tell you this. It's not only happened to kids. Okay, so when I came to America 2 years ago on a family visit, right, and we wanted to walk downtown, and
What city?
we wanted to walk in downtown in Seattle, and just have a little walk in downtown, right, and there were 20 something people around the house saying that do not do that. It's scary. It's and I say, If we are too fearful of things around us, then who's gonna go out and walk? So my wife and I decided we're not gonna walk tonight. We're gonna walk the next morning, the next night, the next morning, the next night, for 2 weeks straight. We went and we walk, and then we take photos together. We show them how beautiful downtown Seattle is. We let them not to worry about it. And then you know what? A week later, when we left, my daughter took a bus downtown, and then she
Hmm.
walked downtown and she tell us how beautiful it is. I say, see, you want to choose to live in the world of abundance or a world of fearfulness. This is your choice. All right. So you have to practice the choice like that. So thank you
Who was
for.
telling you not to walk in downtown Seattle? I mean, don't people go to work? I mean, don't people shop?
Here's the thing. My wife is Chinese Vietnamese. I am Vietnamese, right? So,
Uh-huh.
so we surrounded by our relatives when we come to America. So our
Yeah.
friends there, and most of them, are the people who love it at heart. So, and then
Hmm.
I think that they come from the worry that something's gonna be happening to us, right? So all of those advices, we took it with with
A grain of
grace.
salt.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
But then we don't want to do like that, and then we don't want to live like that also. So thank you for writing that article, because that's really wake a lot of people up to really look at the reality, and maybe they had a beautiful childhood, but they may not do it for their children, and maybe it's a way for them to to return that freedom for the kids to learn how to live the way that you've been doing, right?
Right. So one of the reasons that I sort of fight for this is that what you just talked about is there's fear and then there's reality. And the only way you can get to reality is by experiencing it. You can't keep thinking, well, if I went out, it might be safe, but what if there's murderers? What if there's a fire? What if it's scary? What if there's a robber? Then you don't go out. And so, really, my whole goal is to give people back the experience of letting go of their kids for a little while and letting them go to the other aisle at the grocery or walk to the store or play at the park. And then they're not in this spiral again of terror because, like when you were showing the pictures to your relatives, it's like, does this look scary? Doesn't this look like a nice store? Look, we got grapes. Don't they look delicious? You don't have to order them from Fresh Direct. You don't have to order them from Amazon. You can actually go to a store and buy them. Until you break through with reality, and this is true with therapy, even, is like nothing changes your thought pattern other than changing your actions. And so, really, so after all the hoopla about my column about why I let my kid take the subway, and I was on all these television stations and defending myself right and left, I started a blog and I called it Free Range Kids. And the slogan was, I always have like too many slogans, but one of them was, our kids are smarter and safer than our culture gives them credit for. But the other one was, I'm not an unsafety minded person. I love car seats and seat belts and mouth guards and helmets. I mean, I'm really, a mom of my era. I do want my kids to live and to thrive. So I'm not heedless of danger, but I'm sort of rational about danger, and that's what's weird. And I think one of the reasons I am so rational is because I was a reporter, and I would go around my city and meet people and go to their homes. I used to do a column where I would go to anybody's house that would invite me over for dinner and write about their food and their family. I'm trying to think if I did a family from Vietnam. I don't remember. Definitely did China. And so reality was that it was a nice city. It's not perfect, but it's not perfect inside your home. Your kid could fall down the stairs or choke on a penny. So why do we think that your kids are fine when they're next to you, and then they're in danger, they're doomed if you let them outside? And the weird thing is that slowly things have been going worse for American kids as we've clamped down on their freedom, because over the decades, there's amazing stories about how much people used to roam around as kids and what was normal one generation ago, two generations ago, three generations ago. Forget it. It's like reading about, Benjamin Franklin. But even a generation ago, 6-year-olds were walking to school and going to the store, and now it's just unheard of. But as that freedom has gone down, their anxiety and depression have been going up. And people think, oh, it's smartphones. Oh, those damn phones. It's like, well, this was happening before smartphones. Oh, it's COVID. No, it's happening before COVID. This if I started this in 2008 or 9, that, the iPhone didn't come out until like 2010. So it's not just technology. Technology obviously changes things a lot and exacerbates problems, but we had already lost our ability to accept the fact that it's impossible to make things perfectly safe, but that doesn't mean they aren't safe enough. And I would say right now they're extremely safe, and they'll probably get a little safer, but the crime in America went up, it's gone down, it's back to what it was in like 1960 something or 73. So somehow the ability that we had back then to say, well, it's not like there's no crime in America. But I think I can handle it. My kids, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be okay with that tiny possibility and send my kid outside. And now we're not okay with any point I'm looking over here percent chance that something might happen. That's what's so interesting to me. How did we get to be such babies and not be able to understand that the real world will never be perfect, and that's the world we're all going to live in, so let's get our kids to be part of it.
Wow. And this conversation is designed for people to know more about, why you doing what you do, right? And I believe that there was a lot of thinking that happened before that, 2009, leading you to that. Cool. So let's travel time. How does that sound to you?
Okay, yeah. I mean, my memory's not that great, but we'll try to travel, right? We might not get that far back, but let's try.
So I grew up in a small city called Da Nang, so it's in the middle of my country. Very poor community, in a very poor house, and in our area, one night we had electricity, and the next night or so we did not have electricity. So, when the moon arose, so we will be able to see things that beautifully. So my first dream about the work that I wants to do, it was to become an astronaut and flying to the moon, saw things
so
how beautiful it is there. And life did not give me that opportunity, and
yet.
Okay. Except that I've been interviewed a lot of astronauts, and one of those astronauts that we interviewed, actually, his name is Charlie, and he went to the moon. He's the youngest out of the 12 person ever walk on the moon. So, for you, when you were little, what was your dream about the future works that Lenore is going to do and add value to the world?
That is like hard to remember. All I can tell you is that when I was a kid, I had a lot of free time, and I spent it very happily doing stuff that didn't seem to have any purpose. I spent a lot of time. I don't know if this is something that you guys care about in your culture, but you know about 4-leaf clovers? Most clovers have 3 leaves, but once in a while you find one with 4 leaves. I actually have one here. Hang on. See that? That's a
Yes.
clover. So I spent an inordinate amount of time, a stupid amount of time, sitting on the grass looking for 4-leaf clovers. I don't even know if I was thinking deep thoughts or any thoughts, but it was so satisfying. And my mother didn't sit there worrying like, oh my God, this girl is wasting all her potential. She could be smart, she could be learning violin, but no, she's looking for 4-leaf clovers. So what I had back then that I don't think kids get today is the gift of trust, which is that my mom trusted I was going to end up, smart enough and well-adjusted enough and successful enough, even without constant adult intervention and classes and supervision. And then I would wander around the woods just for hours, just for fun. And my mom wasn't thinking she'll be killed by a wolf or a predator or an owl or who knows, poison ivy. And then I had a lot of time in my room just reading and often rereading books. So I wasn't getting ahead. I was still rereading the same books that I liked. I read fairy tales. Were they going to turn me into a sexist jerk who was waiting for a prince to come and save me? There was just the culture hadn't shifted yet to believing that any moment a child isn't being cultivated and supervised and assisted by an adult is time that they must be fallow. It must be wasted time that's going to leave them behind. And I don't want my kid to end up in the ash heap of history. I better get her to a lesson, a class, some activity that's going to boost her up. And I was just talking this morning before you, believe it or not. It's just 9 here. I was talking at 7:30 to a friend who's a psychiatrist who was talking about parents who have to get up at like the crack of dawn on the weekends and drive 3 hours to get their child to a soccer meet or a hockey game, several cities away and sometimes a couple states away, so that they can prove that they're a better 7-year-old hockey player. Who cares? Nobody's drafting the 7-year-old into the National Hockey League, right? And that way they'll be able to go on to the 9-year-old hockey league, and maybe eventually they'll be in the high school hockey league, and maybe eventually they'll get a scholarship. And there wasn't a direct link between a parent's specific hopes for their child and what they cultivated in their kid's life on a daily basis, and how much the parent had to dedicate themselves, their time, their money to doing those activities. And in America, I don't know if it's the same in Vietnam, but in America, there's been this sort of sharp decline in the birth rate. And there's all sorts of reasons for it. And I actually don't know. Nobody knows. That's why everybody's conjecturing. But my conjecture, especially in the fact that 10% more young men want babies than women. So women are less interested, which I would have thought would be the opposite, in having babies. And I think, yeah, I mean, if I look ahead and I think, oh, I'd love to have a bouncing baby, a bundle of joy, and then when they're 7, I'll be driving 3 hours at 5 in the morning to go to a really cold place and have my kid play soccer, and then I'll have to watch the game, and I also have to bring the snacks, and then I also have to bring my baby with me because my husband's busy. It doesn't seem like a fun prospect. It seems like endless obligations and and obligations, because you think that without doing all that, you have a sinkhole of a child. So that's a worry. I don't know how much parents are imagining that, or people without kids are imagining that, but I see it in friends who do have young kids. I have a friend with a 2-year-old, and they pay for the kid to be in daycare all day, and then I guess at 3 p.m. it becomes after daycare care, and then you can have your child learning gymnastics or soccer. It's like she's 2 years old. Don't you think that if you just gave her like a ball and a room with some friends, or if you let her, sit on the grass and practice tumbling, that'd be fine? But no, you pay extra so that the kid is entertained and educated without ever recognizing that education and entertainment don't have to be led by an adult.
Then if you've been in this space for long, so what went wrong along the way that parents forgot about their past, and now they create a new behavior that affected not only the children but themselves also?
Well, part of it is like this rat race. It's like so many parents who do want to do what I say, let your kids just play outside, say, I'd like to, but there's no kids outside. They're all in the car going to the soccer game. So part of it is that once a culture sort of shifts to a continually adult-run, adult activities, model, then it's very hard for you to be the only one saying, kids, go have fun at the park. Like, there's no one there. Plus some lady said, why are you out there? You're going to be snatched. And she's calling 911 to make sure that the police come and tell you never to let the kids outside. So there's part of it is the collective action problem, which we do have a solution for. I'll tell you about that later. But I think what happened, and this is really why I can get up in the morning and talk to you, is because I don't totally understand. It's sort of like a giant mind shift from confidence to terror about like the fact that your family members wouldn't let you go to downtown Seattle. It's like, why don't you stay in Vietnam? If you're just going to do everything online and you're scared to take advantage of, this culture, this language, what's afforded there, it's cheaper in Vietnam and you still have broadband access. So what are you doing in Seattle if you're never going into Seattle? It's the fear that has permeated a generation about almost everything. And there's studies done about the generations. And the most recent study I read, and this is about millennials, so there's younger kids now, but the people with the most trust, like trust in other people, trust that people are good, are the oldest people. And then it goes down in each generation to the point where it was just 19% of millennials felt that most people are good. And that's, yeah, it's a terrible way for to live because it's so unhappy and scared. But it's also terrible for a culture. And there was a cool study done, God knows how, a study over the decades of kids raised with certain what they call primals. And a primal is sort of I think it's called primals. It might be called priors. I can never remember. But it's basically what is the outlook that you're being raised with. Is it, people are good, you can trust them, go forth and, have a good time, meet people? Or is it, don't be a sucker, everyone's out for themselves, you're going to be cheated, don't be a patsy, don't let yourself get taken advantage of. And in both cases, the parents are raising the kids as best they can with what they think is the best message for them, for their kids to get ahead. The people who are saying, it's a dog eat dog world aren't doing that to scare their kids. They're doing that to help their kids navigate the world as they see it. But the cool thing was that this study looked at the kids over time and got to them at middle age. And the ones who were told, don't trust anyone, were doing worse across the board. And in things that you wouldn't think were necessarily impacted by that. They were making less money. They were less satisfied in their jobs. They had more divorce, right? They were less healthy. And it makes sense to me, but only intuitively, that of course, if you think that the world is a terrible place and you have to shrink from it and, you don't want to be part of it because you don't want to be hurt, that's not going to be a great life. But that seems to be what we're basically giving kids now. And I'll show you, I just bought this the other day, so it's my favorite new item. So in America, possibly made in Vietnam, I should check. Doesn't say. Made in Vietnam or China. There's a very popular brand of shoe called Skechers. Have you heard of Skechers?
Of course,
Yes.
made in Vietnam or China. There's two countries.
Yeah, possibly
But
China.
highly likely it's made in Vietnam and by a owner that we know personally also.
I'm seeing, it probably says on the box, which I have in the other room. Anyways, if you buy these Skechers, then you have to lift up the insole, which is the little part that you put your foot on, and then another part. And then you get to the bottom, and I don't know if you can see that there, but that's
Yes.
a little, there's a little slot that you open up with a screwdriver, and you put the air tag in it. And then you hide it from your kid so that they think they're free. and only then are you supposed to feel confident enough to let your child be outside or almost do anything. And it's upsetting to me that childhood itself, even your kids' shoes, are being rewritten as so dangerous, so dicey, so crazy, that to let your child go outside without you personally tracking them is a danger that no decent parent would allow. I went to my local Skechers store and I asked the clerk, I said, anybody buying? Oh, yes, they're very popular. Okay. So a kind of supervision, tracking that was not available in the history of the world till now is suddenly normal. So normal that you buy your kids some shoes before the school year begins. And that allows you to see, oh, she's 2 blocks away. Oh, I mean, I don't even know if they let them be 2 blocks away. Nobody lets their kid walk to school. 11% of kids walk to school here. But, oh, she's upstairs, right? Oh, she's in the backyard. Phew, I wouldn't want her in the front yard. So we're creating a culture that is deliberately eviscerating our belief in anybody but ourselves. We're watching them. It's not my neighbors. It's not the teachers. It's not strangers. It's not an all-powerful being. It's only you. Only you care enough to keep your kids safe enough that they will live another day. That's why I keep doing what I'm doing. That's a huge cultural shift. And it's strange to me that I'm the one talking about this and it's not a huge conversation. I mean, that this is just normal and Lenore is on the random podcast here and there. So I feel like Cassandra, you guys don't realize this is a big deal, hark ye, that this is bad, but that's what I do. I go, hark ye, this is bad.
Lenore, I think it's fun, right? It's funny to say this way. We adults didn't want our boss to monitor us. didn't
Hmm.
want our company to install a software into our laptop to
Hmm.
know where we are and what we do. We went on and criticized companies, let's say in China and Vietnam, they put a camera and watching it where everybody is moving, whether or not they go to the bathroom for 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah, yeah, the whole
and
social
and
credit
and
thing. Yeah,
and in here we are doing exactly even
see that.
worse to the people next to us. All right. And the other day that my wife and I sat together and we say, okay, we talked. We were asked about a narrative fallacy. So people trying to find a reason for why they're doing what they do, and it's called narrative fallacy. And
Wait,
they're
they call
trying
it
to
what? What do they call it?
narrative fallacy.
Okay, a narrative
Yes,
fallacy?
yes, yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I like that
Yeah,
phrase.
so that
Okay.
is the term coined by Daniel Kahneman. So he's the
Oh,
Nobel.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it means that like I will find thousands of reasons to justify for why I do this, but because my reason was right, and I try to find reason to support. My boss not supposed to be watching me, not supposed to be like micromanaging me, right? But then it's okay for me to micromanage our children because of 1,000 different reasons, but the core
Because
is
they're
the same.
little, they're so vulnerable. I mean, yes. Okay, go on. I'm sorry. Yes.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening. Yes.
Right. So there's a couple of things. I'm going to look on my phone for a second. So just hum or something because I want to show you something that
Sure.
somebody sent me. Albums. Where's the album with preschool? Wow, I should put it at the top. All right, let's assume it's too hard to find. But a friend sent me the notices that she gets every day from her kids' preschool, and it says 9:27 a.m. P, 10:22 a.m. P, 12:07 p.m. P, and bowel movement. 3 p.m. more P. I mean, when you're talking about you don't want the bosses to, see when you went to the bathroom and how long it took or whatever, this is what a normal preschool thinks the parents want. And then they normalize the idea that, like, well, of course you want to know how often your child went to the bathroom. What if there's some problem? It's like, what problem? you know, kids go to the bathroom. It's not a problem. You don't need to know. Certainly not down to the minute. I guess if there's day after day after day, we notice she's not going to the bathroom anymore. That's something. But that kind of granularity is what we are used to for until recently for children who are very ill. Right? If they were in the hospital in intensive care, the nurses had to write down, okay, another wet diaper, good, she's getting better, eventually we'll be able to take her off all these tubes. But we're treating all kids as if they're at death's door. And literally death's door. Either they're walking outside and they've left, the door and they're heading to death, or they're at preschool and we better let the parents know. And it's also she ate all of her chicken nuggets and 3 of her orange segments. It's this level of excessive concern that's boring, that's almost ritualistic. Maybe it's instead of religion, we instead of looking at chicken entrails and trying to figure out the future, we look at the when they went to the bathroom. But it's uh, it makes life so fraught for, first of all, it's boring for the preschool teacher whose job, instead of playing with the kids or reading aloud a story, is like, well, was that P? Oh, it's P and BM. Okay, that's a rotten job, right?
Mm.
And then the parents are getting this information and they think it must be significant, and it's like, well, yesterday she went to the bathroom 3 times and today it was only twice. Do you think there's a problem? So everything becomes a potential issue. There's a parenting writer here in America who I love named Wendy Mogul, who wrote The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. It was very popular before mine. Basically you can read her and you don't have to read me. There's a lot of people that are all saying the same thing. But one of the things that she said that really struck me is that if you look at anything closely, you see the flaws, you see the problems. And I think one of the reasons we parents are going so crazy in America is that we are seeing everything. It's like, well, I saw he was walking home, but then he stopped. Do you think he got thrown into a trunk? Or do you think he's picking a dandelion? I don't know. And then there's another device called a Gizmo Watch where you can call the kid. Are you okay, honey? They don't pick up. Oh my God, he's not picking up. Maybe it isn't a dandelion. Maybe he is in a trunk. At that point, you press another button, or maybe just press the same button twice. I don't know. And you are listening in. They don't know it, but you're listening to whatever he is saying to his friend or to himself or singing. So as worried as we are about the bosses watching us and on our computers, and are we writing a personal email or texting when we should be doing our work, there's zero privacy, zero internal life afforded to our kids because it's just too dangerous. And nobody thinks about, what is this doing to a kid? What is this doing to the parent-child relationship? Say he's talking to his friend and he says, my daddy is a poopy head. I hate him. And you're the dad. And now you think, like, does my child hate me? It's like he's just talking to his friend. And now you have this information that you have to deal with. So the more information we get, and this is an information overload culture when it comes to our kids, the more worried we are, the closer we hover, the more information we get, the closer we hover, and we seem to be in this spiral that I'm trying to get us out of.
And I don't think that the quality of their works also will be impacting because of distractions like this, right? Assuming like if you're a writer and then every 5 minutes you focus on something else, check it, yeah, there will be no way that you're gonna do great works, right? And then what if you're at work? You're at that will impact not only you but the people next to you, and that vicious circle will happen, and then eventually there's a boss out there, the HR department will call you in, and you create
You seem to be checking
phone.
your phone all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I have to. The preschool keeps calling me because she ate another orange segment. I should know. Right. So when you talk about the oversight, the micromanagement, there's something. So one of the founders of Let Grow with me is a guy named Peter Gray. I highly recommend him. He's so smart, so wonderful. Who has written about the importance of mixed ages playing together. Mixed age, not parents and kids, but like the 5-year-old with the 12-year-old with the 15-year-old. And one of the things he talks about is when kids organize themselves into a game, they're making it happen, they're compromising, they're yelling, and all of this develops what he calls an internal locus of control. Who's in control of you? You are. You figured out what you want to do. You're arguing for what you want. Oh, you don't get your way, but you deal with it. All of that builds this sense that I can handle things. I'm a person in full. And the opposite is micromanagement, where somebody says, honey, why don't you try this? Oh, I'm going to do this for you. Oh, that looks hard. Here, let me help. And when other people are telling you what to do, whether that's the boss micromanaging you through your software on your computer, or your mom turning around while she's driving and saying, honey, should we practice our alphabet some more? It's an external locus of control. And I'm not saying that parents shouldn't be involved with their kids at all, but when every moment of a kid's day is organized or overseen by someone else, there's very little chance to develop that internal locus of control because somebody is telling you it's time for baseball, it's time to do your homework, now it's reading time. And so when you don't have a strong internal locus of control, you're much more likely to, first of all, feel like a victim because you are. Somebody else is sort of lording it over you. But also you're going to be anxious because somebody else is going to decide if you were doing something good or bad or, instruct you again. And depressed because your life is not so meaningful because you don't get to make any impact on it, right? Somebody else for your own good. And so what Peter talks about is we've taken the internal locus of control out of kids' lives, and we think we're doing it for their benefit because now they're getting, homework help, and now they're getting their soccer practice, and now they're getting a healthy snack, and now they're getting whatever it is that you're giving them. And really what they need is time without us there so that they can goof around and figure out something that they want to try and do it. And oh my God, that was a disaster, and realize that's not the end of the world. So as you saw in my TED Talk, the title is Why You Should Spend Less Time with Your Kids, or Why We Should Spend Less Time with Our Kids. I don't remember. But the point is that if you're there, you're going to intervene. And if you're not there, then they have to figure things out. So we have to give them back some time when they can develop this sense of, I can make things happen. I can deal with some confusion and sometimes some disappointment.
So for that article, you've been writing hundreds of articles before that, right? So for
Yeah.
that particular article in 2009, how long did it take you to actually publish it?
Well, the thing is that I published back then. I had a actually that reminds me. Today is my day that my column is due. Back then, I had to write a column twice a week.
Uh-huh.
What am I going to write today? I don't have any great ideas. Anyways, so on the other hand, the day is young, and so I just had a deadline. And in fact, my son had taken the subway, had done this thing like 2 months earlier. And it was a day when I was like, I don't have any good ideas. I could write about the governor's election, or I could write about Izzy taking the subway or something else, the joys of Jello. I don't know what I was going to write. And my editor said, "Yeah, write about the subway thing. That sounds like a nice local story." And so I wrote While I'm a 9-year-old, but it probably took me, a day to write it. Um, and I looked back after that at older columns I'd written, and I saw columns about like I have two sons. I let them go to the men's room, not the ladies' room, with me if we were at a restaurant or a theater. I didn't feel like I had to take them in with me to keep them safe. I thought, your boys go in there. I didn't think they were going to be raped or killed or abducted. And then I found an earlier column from we lived in a 37-story building, and I would let the kids take the elevator down and go to the courtyard, which was there were no cars. It was a courtyard between all the four of these tall buildings, and I'd let them play there. And there were a million guards, and a lot of the UN personnel lived in this same building. And I wrote a column about that. It's like, I don't think I have to be in the elevator with them. They're going to go from my apartment downstairs. There's a doorman. They go outside. It's a courtyard. There's guards. There's no cars. So I saw it wasn't like the idea of overprotection was a new one to me. But it's not even that I care about overprotection. I care about undertrusting. Like,
Hmm.
to think that you have to be in the elevator with your kids means that you think that there are roving bands of marauders who are getting in on the 17th floor, ready to, eviscerate your child. And then nobody would notice, and they would, run off on the 12th floor, and your kid would stumble out all bloody. I mean, it's just this fantasy world that people live in that make it seem like you have to do something that you don't. And I had other things to do, and they had other things to do. And it doesn't make me a less caring mom or a less cautious mom. It just makes me a mom living in reality. And that has been a motivating factor for a long time.
So the question is, once you woke up in the next morning knowing that your article went viral and a lot of people, like around the world, criticized for that piece that you wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a something inside of you said that you have to defend for it because that's the right thing to do and the right kind of mindset that can help kids to have the freedom and parents also have their own freedom also, right? Where did you get all of that courage to go against all of the currents and and push back little by little and let people
Mm.
to remember they once will live that way? Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was courage. It was just as people started interviewing me like you, and I realized, oh, this is what I believe. And as much blowback as there was, the first comment on my blog was asshole. Like, okay, I get it. But then there were a flood of things like, this is how I was raised. I love this. I wish I could do this for my kid. Thank you for being a voice of sanity. This is how we're trying to raise our kids. So you're not controversial if everybody thinks you're wrong. You're controversial if some people think you're right and some people think you're wrong. And there's
Mm.
always been a lot of people on my side. And in fact, so for 10 years, it was just me being, talking about so I wrote the book Free Range Kids after I started the blog Free Range Kids. And then I went around the country and to a certain extent the world lecturing about it. But then about 8 years ago, Jonathan Haidt, who everybody loves, he wrote The Anxious Generation. That's very popular now. And another guy named Dan Schuckman came to me and said, kids are falling apart on campus. They think that they're literally unsafe because a speaker is coming who they don't agree with. And that's not unsafe. That's uncomfortable maybe or unhappy, but it's not literally unsafe. The person is not coming with a gun. And so trying to change them, make them more open-minded and realize how resilient they are at 18, 19, 20 is this late stage intervention. And as they thought about that, John was a professor and Dan used to fight for free speech, still does, fights for free speech on campus with an organization called FIRE. John said, well, I read Free Range Kids. I love Lenore. We're raising our kids free range. Let's start a nonprofit with her, and then we can start raising kids, more resilient and open-minded and excited about the world, curious as opposed to shrinking from the get-go. So then they came to me and I said, okay, but we also have to bring in Peter Gray because he's the person I talk about all the time and quote and steal from. And if you like my talk, you should really watch Peter Gray's talk because you'll think, those ideas sound awfully familiar. And Peter Gray said them 10 years earlier. But so Peter Gray is this professor who talks about play. And so then the four of us started Let Grow together. So rather than me being this, voice in the wilderness, I had, two professors and a successful New York businessman, philanthropist, activist, and me, old journalist, me, starting Let Grow, which is the organization that I run now. So it hasn't been this solo journey. What I don't understand is where are the other organizations trying to do what we're trying to do? There's a lot of organizations that are anti-phone. There are a lot of organizations, I don't know, anti-bullying and pro mental health or whatever, but nobody is saying let kids just go and do stuff on their own. And that's amazing to me that this remains a dicey topic.
When you show me the shoe made by Skechers, and I'm scared. I'm scared of the responsibility of manufacture a big brand in terms of the future, because right now they satisfy a certain numbers of mom and dads who want certain things like that. But on the other side of the coin, I see that they are making the kids feel, unsafe, and they contribute to that part of leading the next generation feeling scary about, not being able to be resilient and going outside, right? So 2 months ago, my wife and I, we built a platform called sustainabilitymind.com. Okay,
what did you do?
Well, it's called sustainability mind. So it's the mindset about sustainability. So I believe that what you've been doing is also to help building something sustainable for the children in the future, right? So they can be confident, go out, confident,
Right.
enjoy life. So what we also believe is that the way that people talk about sustainability, about
that's
still,
interesting, right?
Yeah, it's still different from country to country, people to people, organization to organization. And they all talk about action plans, but we barely see anyone talk about having the mindset of sustainability mindset. What is that? So
That's cool.
If we teach people about that kind of mindset, maybe that would be the way that they start to do things now today, right? So and I want to link between what you do to that sustainability mind. If you can define a sustainability mind, how would that be to you,
Well, when you're saying sustainability, I'm saying sane ability. An ability to deal with the fact that some things are going to be miserable in your life, and sometimes you're going to lose your job, and sometimes your girlfriend is going to dump you, and sometimes, bad things are going to happen. That's inevitable. And what we've done is, if you think of weaving. When you weave something, there's threads going in this direction and threads going in this direction, and that's what weaves a piece of cloth, right? And what we're giving kids now is all the good stuff, soccer games and high fives and getting their pictures taken all the time and birthday parties. And then what we've taken out of their lives are walking past the scary dog, dealing with not making the team, trying to get kids to agree to your idea, like let's all play Foursquare, and nobody wants to play Foursquare, so you're frustrated and disappointed. And when you don't have the threads going in both directions, weaving back and forth, you've left them with an unsustainable fabric. You can fall through those cracks because you haven't gotten them used to the good and the bad. And I understand how hard it is to watch your kid be disappointed, be picked on, not get chosen for the team, step up and strike out, right? These are horrible things and they hurt me. So the only answer that I've come up with in 17 years is that's why we can't see everything that happens to our kids. Because if we see it, we'll jump in. That wasn't nice. Be nice to him or to our kids. That wasn't fair. You should give the ball back. They have to figure out how to deal with each other to become sustainable, successful, people reading, humans. And really, the way that kids have done this throughout all of human history is, I would say, through play, but it was never called play. It was just called being a kid. And it would be you as a 3-year-old chasing after the very cool 5-year-olds, and then maybe the 17-year-olds scooping you up and taking you with them. And then all of you would, play, let's shoot the elephant. And then you'd run back to the town or the village and you'd watch your mom making a basket, and maybe you'd try to make a basket too. And then it would be off to play some more. And the whole idea of the way kids were growing up was through imitating adults, watching adults, and then dealing with each other. And we've taken the mixed ages out of kids' lives. We've taken the observation out of kids' lives because we just tell them what to do. We've taken the breath of humanity out of child's lives and turned it into soccer and Kumon. And then we wonder, why are they ailing? And it's sort of like, well, in the, Mother Nature sort of expected this to be the model for childhood, that they would spend a lot of time in a group, different ages. The little kids would eventually become the big kids and assume some responsibility. And the bigger kids would become a little empathic because they remembered being the little kid running after them. If you take out every bit of vitamin that Mother Nature expected kids to be getting on a daily basis, and you've replaced it with school from 9 to 4, 10 months a year, told what to do, sitting in a classroom, and then the rest of the day is adult run, I think that you're creating a very delicate app that works perfectly if it's in soccer with a coach and you in the stands to cheer them on or to support them if they lose. And it's not that it's weak, it's that it's not robust. And so if you want to have a robust, sustainable kid, you have to give them a childhood that's filled with like all the colored foods, right? Instead of just this one very processed experience run by adults. So I'd say sustainability is just what happens when you allow kids to do more on their own.
A few years ago, Amy Emerson showed the world about the term psychological safety, right? So help organizations to build safety psychologically at work. And I hope that your work is building psychological safety at home for the parents to start to release and to trust and to make a reverse, change for the children, for themselves too. So what baby steps can they take today?
I'd say, so Let Grow was dedicated to making it easy, normal, and legal to give kids back some independence and free play. So we work, I'd say, a lot through the schools and also with individuals. But we like working with schools because John Haidt always says that a collective problem, which is nobody going outside, nobody letting their kids walk to the park, needs a collective solution, which would be a lot of people doing it at once. And then you don't feel like a nut and there are other kids out there and you've normalized this old-fashioned way of being. And so our 2 free programs for schools are these. One is the Let Grow Play Club, which was the brainchild of Peter Gray, who I keep referencing. And that's just keep the schools open for any kids who want to stay there to be in a play club, which is there's loose parts, there's junk, there's old suitcases and cardboard boxes and balls and hula hoops, and there's an adult there watching like a lifeguard. Lifeguards are kind of aloof, right? They're not going to organize your game. They're not going to solve your argument. They're there to go, hey, cut that out. That kid is drowning, right? They're there for emergencies. And so if you have that, you've created, and no phones, you've created what parents keep saying they want, which is a chance for kids to have interpersonal relationships face to face in real life without their phones. Oh, but they're always on their phones. Yeah, well, how about you keep a space that is free of phones and filled with kids where they can play for a couple hours in the afternoon? That to me seems insanely simple, really cheap. You pay for, some high school kid with a whistle and you're done, right? So we have schools doing what we call the Let Grow Play Club. And then we have even more schools doing what we call the Let Grow Experience. And everything you can look this all up and it's all free at Let Grow, LETGROW. The Let Grow Experience is kids get the homework assignment from their teacher that just says, go home and do something new on your own without your parents, with your parents' permission, but without them. And what's great about that is that it forces the parents to let go even before they're ready. It puts the cart before the horse. So the parents go, oh, I don't want to do this, but it's homework. All right, what do you want to do? It's like, I thought I'd go get my hair cut. No, that's too far. Well, please, I'll go with Jenny. Oh, all right. Or walk to the store or make pancakes without me hovering and saying, watch out, honey, it's hot. Right? And then it's only when the parent has actually let their kid do something independently that they finally get rewired. It's what you were trying to do with your relatives. Look at this picture, but they need to see it. They need to go downtown and realize, like, this is great. Oh my God, this is the best waffle I ever had. This is so fun. Hey, do you think I could ride on that? Hello, officer. You know, if you don't have reality, you don't have anything. And so this brings reality back into parents' lives. And then they realize, like, look at my kid. You know, she went and got the coffee. This is great. Well, you go get me a Danish now. Or, you know, she went to get the coffee. She totally forgot. She got, you know, candy for herself and she forgot to get the change. And you know what? It's still great. She's so proud. I'm happy for her. Next time you got to get the coffee and you realize things don't have to be perfect for your kid to be okay, for an experience to be okay. And that's the only thing that rewires parents. And it is so successful, so fast that a pilot study of giving kids this kind of independence as therapy instead of talk therapy, instead of drugs, using independence as therapy in a pilot study turned out to work faster than cognitive behavioral therapy and better than drugs. And so now the psychologist who's doing the study got $1 million to study it over 3 years because, of course, it's like if you've taken independence out of kids' lives and they need it to live like you know, food. And then you say, well, I'm going to give them some food back. It's like, wow, look, they're all doing better. Yeah, what a surprise. You've given that back something that they absolutely need. So we do those through schools, any school that wants to, any country. I'm not sure the materials are in Vietnamese yet, but they are in like a bunch of languages. So schools can do that. And then we have individual versions for homes. We have a 4 weeks to a more independent kid, to a let grow kid. And the first week you have them start doing more things for themselves, tying their shoes, getting out of bed, making their lunch. And then the next week they do stuff in the neighborhood. And then the next week they do new things with friends or talking to people. My favorite activity, you know, you can choose which activities you want, is order French fries from a human. Like, you can't just press a button, you got to talk to someone. I'd like some French fries. They're very motivated. And then the fourth week is something else great that I can never remember. And by that time, you've seen your kid do so many more things than you thought they were ready for. And they've grown so much that it changes both of you.
Wow, wow.
That's free too. Everything is free.
Thank you. Two last questions for this conversation, Lenore, okay? I think the way that you do is the rewiring both kids and parents and school systems. So, you know, from individual to the large society to make change, right? So my wife and I, we have an ambition to help people to improve their ability to think also, because we believe that our thinking capabilities today has been diminishing. And through conversation like this is the best way for us to help people to improve their ability to think. And the question for you, Noy, is how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Oh, I hope I have. How have I been growing my ability? I guess it's just that all I do these days is talk, right? I mean, this is like what I'm doing with you is sort of my day, you know, and then I'll write an article. As you know, I have a deadline. But really, the same thing that reporters have always done, which grows their mindset on a daily basis, is talk to somebody new, ask them a bunch of questions, go, wow, I didn't know about that, and then ask them some more. So for me, pretty much the only, I mean, I read a lot of books, but I'd say the way I generally learn is just by talking to people and asking questions. And then I started and I stopped. It's like I learned so many amazing things every day, like just weird facts and stuff, that I started putting like what I learned today. But I stopped that, so maybe I should start that again.
The last question. I'm going to bring you to the test stage one last time. All right. But this is not you. It's not you. It's going to be a version of you who at young age and went to the garden and collecting flowers and leaves.
Right.
Little girl, that little Lenore is going to that big test stage. And talk about, what you've been talking, right? Or,
Yeah.
and she shared about whatever she could share about that experience. What would she say to all of the audience there and the audience, all
What
of
a
the listeners?
wild, yeah, it's a wild question. I guess what I would say is, first of all, I'd sit on the ground with my knees like in a W, because that's how I always used to sit on the ground. And maybe I'd be looking down because I had never given a public speech before. And then I'd tell them the truth, which is, I'm here because my mom told me, march to your own drummer. She just believed that I could do anything. I wasn't going to like be sad or bad or unsuccessful just because I was a weirdo. I used to make sculptures out of toilet paper. I mean, I just did all sorts of strange things on my own. And that was the wind beneath my wings. And I'd say what you really want from the person or the people who love you the most is for them to believe in you.
Hmm.
And that's the gift to give your kids. Believe in them. It's not all you, believe in them.
Wow. I said that I have two last questions, but if I can have one last one, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, alrighty. So, because in the 20th of October is going to be a Women Day in our region. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that women have superpower. Like you have your own superpower that have changing, through your works, you have parents to change and kids to find, their power back and their life, right? So, if you can tell one superpower that women's having and how they can use it to change the world, what would that be?
I think we're good listeners and talkers, so we connect. So if we've had an experience that is surprising or interesting, we'll just share it with somebody. All I do is I talk to my friends a lot, and I'd say that maybe that's our superpower. I don't see guys talking to each other as much. So I guess our superpower is sort of just um, connecting and absorbing and maybe even believing in each other. I guess it always boils down to just assume the best of everybody and connect.
Wow. Wow. Lenore, thank you so much for being
Oh,
so
thank you.
kind and generous to spend time to join our show and share your stories and your wisdom with our audience. And we love you, and we look forward to seeing you in person here or in New York. Okay?
That sounds great. How about both?
How about both? Yes,
That'd be
absolutely.
great.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Yeah.
Thank you, Ha. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Have a good day there. Bye bye.